This is Pastor, an F-rank anime lover who belongs to a real-life guild named Liar's Trap. Here he's the lowest rank of all awakened members, people with very special abilities. As such, he's basically useless when they raid dungeons, so he spends most of his time watching anime recaps. But luckily for Pastor, he's now gained a brand new ability to separate him from the rest of the F-rank awakened. The ability? A so-called real hypnosis app. That's why he has not watched anime lately, as he's researching his brand new power. However, today, he gets randomly bonked on the head. As he turns around, he discovers that the culprit is a red headbong shell with whale-like personalities. She is Scarrate, a woman with tremendous power, literally one of the strongest members around. It's further revealed that she's an S-class awakened, part of the Rate family, renowned due to their fire-bending powers. Apparently, the two have been friends for well over 20 years, but she tells others that they only know each other a little bit. Anyways, due to her crazy talent, she's risen to become the team leader of Team 1. Thus, after bonking him, she pulls on his ear, angrily asking why an F-rank like him is not working, as he looks like he's busy taking a break. As she berates him, her eyes quickly shift to his phone as our boy looks like he's watching some sussy material. Meanwhile, as she snatches the phone, Pastor is too busy trying to make excuses, so he doesn't even notice the trouble he's about to be in. Eventually, she pipes up and asks him if he's reading a webtoon. It was at this moment that Pastor knew he would need some holy water to get out of his dilemma. He then begins to freak out as he realizes that his weirdest secrets is about to be revealed. Regardless, Scar continues to scroll through his phone, only for her to stop as she begins cracking up. Suddenly, she turns his phone straight at him, revealing Pastor's secret of also being into sussy anime, as one of the scenes is a man cosplaying a jackhammer. If you look closely enough, it's as if he's watching King anime recaps. Anyways, unfortunately for him, she hysterically laughs so hard that everyone inside the headquarters have now shifted their attention to the two. As such, the boys begin to make fun of him, while the girls are not amused as they quickly want to report him. Now with him entirely exposed, his work life is now ruined, but at least he gets his phone back from Scar. She then proceeds to walk away while simultaneously waving him off and teasing him to have fun with his app. If I were him, I would jump out that window ASAP, but instead he begins to grimace with anger. He then channeled his anger through to his fingertips as he thinks to himself that she's made a major mistake. Pastor then claims that tonight will be the night he'll make her his fallen assistant. Fast forward to the evening where it's revealed that Pastor is actually struck as he's made it inside her apartment. There, he proceeds to activate his plan of entering not only her apartment, but also deep inside her avocado. As he continues on with his plan, he begins to insult her, claiming that she only got promoted due to the size of the watermelon she was growing. Of course, she claims that it isn't true, while under the effects of his hypnosis spell. Eventually, he finds her weak spot and, well, the rest was history. After the quick play date, Pastor checks his phone only to discover that it's way past late for these boomers. He then looks behind him to check on Scar, but she's still knocked out due to being in a state of utter bliss. Nevertheless, he whips out his phone to find the nearest subway, only for him to realize that something is terribly off. Pastor then looks back in disbelief as his app was stuck on the loading screen, so there's no way his app could have worked. Thus, Pastor begins sweating more than I do on the toilet, as his question of how she got hypnotized is left unanswered. That's right, guys, our boy is dense since he won her over with consent. The next morning, Pastor finds himself in front of the genius app creator, where he explains what happened last night. He tells the creator, known as Eam, that he accidentally hypnotized someone with her app. So Eam asks who exactly did he hypnotize. Thus, he reveals that it was actually Scarrate. However, after finding out more details about his encounter, she gets annoyed, having found out that he used it for sussy Becca activities. Nonetheless, since Eam is part of the guild who also happens to be the greatest inventor of all time, she decides to do him a favor. Within seconds, she just looks at the phone and the app was seemingly fixed as she's a true programmer. As such, she hands the phone back, explaining that due to an error, the fake and real hypnosis app were accidentally linked together. Now realizing that the real app was fake the entire time, he calls her bluff, causing her to spit the entire drink she was drinking. Pastor then begins to nervously piece everything together as it dawns on him that during his escapades with Scar last night, she was actually aware the entire time. As such, he tells Eam that he's about to go crazy as she bamboozled this dumb and dense F-rank member. A flashback of last night then occurs, showcasing all the weird things he made Scar do, unaware she was actually not hypnotized. Instead, she played along the entire time without a single hesitation to any of his demands. Nonetheless, he snaps back to reality, where he begins to scream at Eam as he knows his life is now over. As stunned as he is, he starts to list off every bad scenario that's about to happen to him to Eam. Unfortunately for Pastor, he's now become too much to handle for Eam, so she hits the emergency button. In an instant, he gets ejected out of the room while Eam also panics as she's now exposed for giving away a failed ability to a guild member. Regardless, after getting ejected out of the room, Pastor swiftly runs away as it is now his only course of action. He then looks back down at his phone with his face stuck in deep regret. There's nothing much he can do now, except he begins to think he was set up the entire time. Unfortunately for him, he had suddenly tripped by an unknown figure. It's then revealed that it was none other than herself, Scar, impeding his chances for escape. As he looks up angrily, not knowing who it was, all he can hear is Scar reminding him that running inside guild headquarters is prohibited. Now frozen in fear, due to Scar being an S-rank member, all he can think of is how screwed he's about to be. As such, he starts to imagine that today will be his last day to grace the world of anime. Luckily for him, he's not finished instantly, as she unexpectedly just gets close to him, equipped with whale watermelons. However, things begin to heat up as she grabs his tie and asks Star Ace lookalike what he's doing here so early. The turntables then turn as she pesters him by asking if he's lurking around this early to meet another girl. Pastor denies it, of course, as he claims he's just here early for work. Scar is satisfied with his answer, so while she thinks of what to ask next, Pastor plans to escape as soon as she looks away. Eventually, she turns around, exclaiming out loud that she's stupid for expecting something from him. Thus, she insults him for being pathetic, and continues by ranting how he's probably here trying to gain a promotion by wandering around. However, she turns back and laughs at the thought of him being promoted, so instead, she offers him to be her work slave. Upon hearing of all this, Pastor has to try his hardest to hold himself back, but then he somehow thinks to himself that Scar might not have realized she was not hypnotized. Nonetheless, Scar continues by saying that she can help him in more ways than one and drops hints that it might be possible for him to become part of the Rate family. She then gets happily distracted as she daydreams of the two having kids together once they get married. Nevertheless, our Chad decides to take the opportunity to whip out his app to try and attempt to hypnotize her, totally aloof to the fact that she might have liked him the entire time. He then orders her to look at his phone while he calls her a silly little girl. Pastor then leans closer to her, demanding her to become an idiot that can only make weird sounds. With such an awkward request at work, she somehow goes through with it, as her eyes begin to be filled with love. Scar then makes the weird noises, so she calls back to Pastor, now calling him Master. Suddenly, they hear multiple footsteps barging in as the rest of the guild members begin to arrive for work in the morning. But this isn't enough for him, so he calls out another command to Scar. This time, he orders her to attempt to cosplay Invisible Girl with her clothes. Originally shocked with his crazy request, she's unable to move, so Pastor tells her that if she's feeling embarrassed, she can start with her coat. He then threatens her by claiming that he'll expose their activities last night as an S rank was somehow controlled by a lowly F rank. To his surprise, she actually goes through with his command, even looking joyful while doing so. She started off with her coat and moved quickly to the rest of her fashion out like boots. He then stood there shocked, unable to believe that he's actually watching Scar attempt to remove her last piece. At the same time, he begins to hear the sounds of his workmates closing in, so he folds and starts screaming at her that he's just joking. However, she didn't stop as she actually went through and completed his quest. Moreover, upon completion of his order, he witnessed how embarrassed she was, so he finally realized that she was faking being hypnotized the entire time. The rest of their guild members then walked into the building. Luckily, the two escaped from the hallway last second. The girls then get confused as they thought they heard some kind of lightning. It turns out that our boy has some kind of powers like the Flash, so he was able to save her in her invisible form from the rest. However, he finds that Scar is in some weird sticky state, looking like as if she found out what true pulled pork tastes like. Meanwhile, Pastor, known as Rabbit, begins to explain his ability. He named his special ability Rabbit Burrow, allowing him to teleport himself and any object he's in contact with as particles of light. It's also revealed that he's been trying to hide his ability this entire time, but today is the first exception he'll make, as Scar would have been exposed. Meanwhile, Scar is still in some kind of love-like state, but she's able to finally sit up. Simultaneously, our dense Rabbit is busy attempting to solve this mystery as he's unable to figure out that she likes him. This is one of the only times that I would recommend our main character to stop using his brain, but to use his wood instead since he's mega dumb. Still dumbfounded, he begins to think back to their old days of her always bullying him. It turns out during the entire 20 years of knowing each other, she always pestered him and beat him up. No matter what day it was, Scar was always somehow able to find him. She picked on him for years, even up to the day he was demoted to guild headquarters. But today, Rabbit has finally had enough, as today will be the last day she'll ever mess with him. As such, he grabs her hand and nods softly. He then proceeded to grab her other one, as she gets smashed onto the wall. All his pent-up anger throughout the decades then begin to be unleashed as he ends up sending her through a portal to another dimension. Rabbit then angrily shouts, claiming that she ruined every single one of his relationships with girls. But right before he transforms into a jackhammer for the avocado, Scar begins to giggle. Before he could investigate further, his phone rings as he gets an urgent message calling him to the monitoring room. As such, he quickly equips all his armor back on and instantly heads out. Meanwhile, Scar gets up, totally frustrated that he's abruptly leaving before her avocado could even get filled by Milkman. Thus, she looks on sad that she never got what she wanted. The story continues with Scar almost getting what she truly wanted done with her avocado. Instead, Rabbit runs away, called to duty, so she demolishes the room with her intense fire powers. Meanwhile, Rabbit has now teleported away, using his hidden powers to quickly get away to the monitoring room. He's now had to use his teleporting powers twice in one day, more than he's ever used in a couple years. Nonetheless, he knocks on the door, asking for a girl named Aya. Upon entering, he finds her bent down, so all he does is ask why she called him here so urgently. However, it turns out that his previous escapade with trying to hypnotize Scar was caught on camera, so Aya replays the tapes. It's then further revealed that not only did they have video recording, but the recording had sound enabled. Rabbit then watches on as he hears everything, including him trying to force the S-rank member to make her clothes go invisible. As such, all Rabbit can do is stand there, petrified that his weirdo self is about to get exposed. Unfortunately for him, Aya is also an S-rank member capable of destroying him in mere seconds if she wishes, but she just stands there, bent over. Personally, this would all make sense if his name was Ben, but it's not. Anyways, the time of reckoning is about to happen as the bent-over Aya says his real name instead of his nickname. But then the Sussy Nation attack quickly, as Aya turns around only to say that he's very bold, while simultaneously looking like she wants it. She then follows up her facial expression by just uttering the words, "cute." A flashback then occurs showcasing the tremendous healing powers of the S-rank Aya. She's loved by pretty much everyone, including all guild members and every community she interacts with. She's always volunteering to help the community while also donating her entire paycheck. In all accounts, she's the perfect healer rich girl that could do no wrong. Especially since it looks like she also has some hypnotizing powers that only works on men due to her whale-like personalities. But out of all the powerful men in the guild, she singled out Pastor. On his first day, she singled him out just to welcome him as she always does with every newcomer. Back in the present, Rabbit mumbles to himself saying that he's screwed. He then attempts his hardest to recall where that camera would have been, as there's no way he would have missed it after all these years. Suddenly, Aya begins closing the gap between the two as she also starts to clench her fists, proclaiming that the downfall of an S-class has been recorded. But, again, he just stands there, making an excuse saying that he didn't just do it because he wanted to. Regardless, Aya looks like she's about to claw him as he yells out saying he's sorry. However, to his surprise, she was only reaching for his hand as her demeanor has quickly changed as well. The next thing out of her mouth is saying to subscribe, but she also asks him if he's feeling okay. She continues by claiming that it was probably Scar that made him do it, somehow thinking that Scar was trying to use it as an excuse to bully him. Furthermore, she begins to berate him, reminding him to always go to her first if Scar rate ever bothers him, even though Aya is not her immediate supervisor. Confused and dumbfounded, Rabbit thanks her for noticing. Meanwhile, Aya traps his right hand in between her watermelons. In the end, she puckers up like a white girl doing a selfie and proceeds to give him a hug, watermelons first of course. While hugging him, she hopes that she won't have a hard time being bullied anymore, because to her, he's more precious than anyone else in the world. She then looks up looking hypnotized, telling him to never hold back anything from her as she's going to go and erase the footage. Now Rabbit has again escaped his seeming demise without him even lifting a finger. But something else is beginning to lift off as she's hugging him below the waist. Truly a master of her watermelons, thus he begins to panic as he can't stop his power from lifting off. Since he's on the verge of powering up, he tries to meditate and also attempts thinking about mountains to keep him calm. In his meditating world, his excitement is slowly subsiding, and luckily for him, he's able to enter his serene state. But the Sussy Nation attacked again as Aya invades his world with clothes totally missing. She ends up trying to attack him with a full display of no holding back. As such, he snaps back to the real world, quickly forcing Aya away from him, since he can't hold on any longer. Pastor then alerts her, claiming that he has urgent business to attend to, so he got to go. Before she could even say goodbye, he uses his hidden teleportation skill once again. Once left alone, Aya looks down in anger, as she begins to whisper the name Scar rate in jealousy. Dark energy starts to flow out of her, as she insults Scar, thinking to herself, why would Scar ever try to flirt with him first? Aya then reveals the fact that the S-rank group of girls have previously agreed to share him between each S-class, but now she's breaking the treaty. Thus, Aya continues to seethe in anger, claiming that she would have won him first as she repeatedly chants his name. In the end, she screams that Pastor is hers while simultaneously cracking the ground with a single stomp from her right foot. She then scoffs at herself being so petty, so she becomes a chibi. Regardless, she returns to her usual self, hoping that no one heard her yell or heard the ground break from her stomp. As such, she quickly uses her powers to restore the room back to its original undamaged self. Moments after completing the full restoration, she becomes thirsty as she once again thinks of Rabbit. This time, however, she cosplays as Sussy Baka, as she starts to attend playtime hours with herself. Apparently, she got so into it that some leftover traces of lightning from Rabbit's teleportation skill was able to help her reach the climax of the mountain. Anyways, this crazy girl finishes as she brings her fingers towards the monitors, claiming she'll make Rabbit hers eventually. Meanwhile, Rabbit discovers himself on the ground after hurriedly teleporting away, saying that it was totally a close call as things would have been a sticky situation. He then whipped out his phone, claiming that Aya is right after all, as he needs to close things with Scar. Suddenly, fiery flames barely shave his head as he was too slow to dodge the surprise attack. Scar then appears out of nowhere looking absolutely frustrated as she shouts his name. She proceeds to scold him as she gets close, frustrated at the fact that he just ran off before the two were able to start the show, as she's been waiting 2 entire decades for him. Still to this day, Pastor has never realized why exactly Scar has always bullied and made fun of him for all these years. You would think that he would have figured it out right now, but no, he still doesn't get it. However, after noticing that Scar is still leaking like a broken faucet, it finally dawned on him, maybe the hypnosis actually works. As such, he grabs her by the shoulders, totally unexpected since he's always been a pushover. Things then move faster than my diarrhea as he quickly grabs a piece of Scar cake. Thus, the spicy meter begins to be pushed to level 68 as Scar falls on him, totally flustered at the ongoing events. She then looks up with a face of endearment, probably hoping that the avocado will finally be opened ripe with a teleporting banana. Afterwards, the two end up back at a hotel. There, they continue the levels of spice as Rabbit, the F-rank loser, lets Scar know that she's looking better than he expected. He then comes closer to her with his eyes disappearing, as we all know that demon time is around the corner. He then begins to grab her to bring her closer to him, only to ask if she'll actually do anything. Of course, she joyfully confirms that she'll always comply to the master's orders just for his own ambitions. As such, he asks her if she wants some wine since she's done an amazing job today at guild headquarters. After saying yes to the reward, Scar watches on as he instead empties the bottle straight to the floor. Now totally confused to why he's waiting such an expensive bottle, she asks what's exactly happening. So he orders her to finish the spilled drink. Initially, Scar is clearly hesitant, as she makes an excuse that the floor is dirty, which is true. However, Rabbit repeats the same command, ordering her to finish it off the ground. Thus, Scar claims she understands, so she actually gets on the ground to attempt completion of the mission. But then, out of nowhere, Rabbit's foot appears onto the screen, telling her to hurry up and finish already. He then combos his command by smacking the vanilla-flavored cakes, causing her to accidentally make some weird noises. Eventually, things ramp up even more as it's revealed to all be a ruse to get her to bend like Aya, as his lightning hands begin to put the avocado in a blender. As if he's a master pianist, he sends her into another dimension, fully locking her down as if he ulted playing as Killjoy. But it didn't end there, as she finally got what she wished for, and it was for him to cosplay a ready-to-go jackhammer. In the end, she looked into 14,600,000 futures, and she finally got to live in the one she would sacrifice everything for. But still to this point, he still doesn't get why Scar is enjoying herself, as he expected her to be seething with rage. As such, he initiates the final combo of infusing his entire body with lightning, to make it clear to Scar that he's enacting revenge for everything she's done. After infusing his body with lightning with his special ability, he decides today will be the day of reckoning. As today, he will make sure the S-rank Scar will never trample over him again. As such, he enters the Overdrive realm, where he sends Scar straight on top of Mount Everest as the firebender reaches climax. The next morning, back at guild headquarters, Pastor is busy at his cubicle as he talks to himself about how the latest Boy Stops Time chapter has some pretty crazy art. So he peeks during work hours again, which is why you can't see his hands as they are too busy doing something else. However, his secret sussy area gets infiltrated by Scar as she slowly makes it over to him, subtly saying hi to everyone else so that no one can get suspicious. Unexpectedly, the Rabbit Master ends up whipping out a brand new app on his phone, somehow allowing him to have powers akin to X-ray vision. He then combos his new power with some imaginary ones, so he ends up picking some clothes for her, confident that it'll suit her. After work, the two end up back at home together, where Scar gets to go on another scenic bike ride over the mountain. Things then take a literal turn as Pastor flips over the bike just to make sure he gets his proper fix of the workout. In the end, Scar repeatedly starts shouting one of the most common passwords of all time, so if you use Master as your password, better go quickly to change it. Anyways, he ends up realizing that he's actually starting to like Scar as he's slowly getting more attracted to her, even though he's doing this to put her in place. Scar then cries tears of joy as her dreams are being fulfilled as the hero gets filled, much to the annoyance of Pastor. He then gets even more frustrated as this is a show of power for him, but Scar does not regret anything as she's just loving every bike ride and activity they do together. As such, he decides to infuse himself with lightning again and proceeds to make Scar turn into a leaking water fountain, still unable to realize that she likes him. Pastor then begins to lose it mentally as he doesn't understand why Scar hasn't broken down yet or admitted defeat, so he keeps on going saying it's not enough. Eventually, he approaches the limit of his stamina bar, due to him going extra fast, like the speed of light, so he begins to think where he can unload the gallon of milk he's carrying. After Scar looks back at him, Pastor is flabbergasted, unable to believe that Scar looks like she wants to continue cosplaying, so he begins thinking how annoying she truly is. Out of nowhere, the S-rank super mage ends up asking Pastor to whisper to her that he loves her, so he gets absolutely confused as he now thinks that Scar is also a master actress, since there's no way she can act hypnotized forever. Thus, he denies her requests. Instead, he turns her over to the face-down seat-up police as he whips the donkey, sending it into a frantic craze. Scar then accidentally passed out due to the overloading electricity affecting her circuits, but Pastor made a tragic rookie mistake. He ended up too tied up in his mission, so he broke his stamina limits, causing him to leave a trail of milk in a place you should never leave. After finally realizing his mistake, Pastor began panicking as he didn't mean to do so since he got derailed due to his excitement. With only one choice left, he decides to activate his forbidden powers to try and teleport his milk trails away from the unintended target, but it's a tall task since he's never tried teleporting something other than himself. Nonetheless, he took a deep breath and away he went, totally focused since he doesn't want a mini lightning god running around anytime soon. After the intense battle, it somehow worked, so now he can totally cross that out of his bucket list. Afterwards, he sat down totally dejected as his constant attempts to get Scar to apologize for bullying him has failed every single time. He then looked down on himself as he began thinking about what will happen when he faces off against other S-rank awakened, since his app doesn't work and Scar is just pretending. After face palming, he ends up just hoping that maybe the other S-class will just pretend being hypnotized just like Scar. A flashback then occurred back when the two were still little. As the two were busy eating the classic fried Pikachu, Scar called over Pastor to ask a question. Upon getting close face-to-face, Scar asked what Pastor wanted to really be when he grew older. Without any hesitation, he mentioned that he knows that he definitely will be an amazing hero in the future. He continued to add on by saying that you will beat up every bad guy out there, so he could help all those that are weak. After he finished explaining what he wanted to be in the future, Pastor asked Scar the same question. She then looked down flustered as she says she just wants to be a good bride. But since she got embarrassed, she changed her answer to her also wanting to be a hero, so she can have unlimited money for pork cutlets. It's then revealed that Scar has been in love with him ever since their childhood, and even till now, Pastor never understood her true intentions. Back in the present, Scar finally woke up after what felt like an entire decade, as she lost all her energy from biking. Upon waking up, she finds herself fully clothed, confused since she can't find Pastor anywhere. She then has some kind of apparent random recollection from a dream, but she just finds herself at her mansion with white and pink pearly gates. Nevertheless, after gaining enough energy to sit up, she mentions to herself how she keeps dreaming about something that happened in the past. But dreams are just dreams, so she stretches herself up wide awake. As she continued stretching, her maid walked in, reminding her that her daily breakfast and morning bath is ready whenever she wants. The maid then curiously asked her if she perhaps remembered anything that happened yesterday before she arrived home. Apparently, she arrived home in a very messy state through a taxi, as she was found totally unconscious. Scar then gets embarrassed as she claims she probably was just drunk, so she tells her assistant that she doesn't need someone to pick her up after work. Afterwards, she motioned to the maid that she can leave now as she says she's going to go get ready for work. After being left alone, Scar can't believe the state she's in now as she's allowing a lowly F-rank dictate her every move. Nevertheless, she still has to go to work today even if she can barely move due to Pastor's electric dancing moves from last night. As she finishes getting ready, she reminds herself that she's Scar-Rate, one of the world's only few S-rank awakened, and also the heir to the prestigious Rate family. She's even the team leader of Team 1 for a top guild called Liar's Trap. She's basically stronger than every man on the planet, Yet, last night, she can't lose the feeling of her being demolished by one last night. It was so intense that Scar can't even remember much of what happened, and all she knows is that the two finally fused their pods together. She continues by saying that she could literally have any man in the world, yet she gave away her first time to an F-class nerd. As such, Scar is super happy as she was finally able to feel what it's like to be a super mess rather than always being a superhero. She then adds a joyful scream, proclaiming that she finally completed her mission, losing her number 1 to the F-class nerd she's always waited for. She's glad she waited, as she compares their romantic relationship to chicken and beer, as those two foods are a match made in heaven. Regardless, she finally finishes and completes her shower inside her massive bathroom, which includes an area she can have tea at. Scar then activated her special fire abilities by creating an inferno from her hands, somehow not setting off the fire alarm. Using the special inferno, she's able to quickly dry herself up, as it's a Raid family secret called the hot drying method. Afterwards, she reveals that since she's the first one to successfully fuse with Pastor, she's going to tell the rest of the S-class what happened so she can see all their freaked out faces. Right before she heads to work, fully ready, she says out loud that she's going to make her dream be a reality sooner rather than later. Back at the Liars Trap Guild headquarters, Scar eagerly waves at some of her team members, causing them to say good morning confused as they never see Scar in a good mood during the early hours. As such, they notice and call out how she seems to be in such a good mood today. Scar doesn't even deny it, so she continues glowing with her smile, asking them shyly if it shows. Rumors then spread like wildfire as everyone in the building now assumes that Scar must have finally met a man she truly likes. Later, as she sits in her office, she surprisingly gets approached by Pastor. However, he acts aloof as if nothing happened the night before, claiming that he's only here to upload all the payment documents from the morning. Meanwhile, everyone gawks from afar as they make fun of Pastor for being an F rank behind his back, but little do they know, he's the one destroying an S rank's back. As he uploads the files in her room, Rabbit accidentally almost falls asleep as he was sleepless due to all the paperwork he gets for being weak. Luckily for him, he's jolted awake as he instantly replies back when Scar calls his name. As Scar points to a corner with a sleazy look on her face, she asks Pastor if he can come with her somewhere for a moment. Meanwhile, the rest of her team members look on, absolutely resenting Pastor, as they think he's being let off the hook for being an F-class due to the two being friends. Anyways, Scar ends up bringing him to a super secluded area of the guild headquarters. After double-checking to make sure that no one can be heard nearby, Scar mentions how it's good that nobody seems to be around. Now if I was Pastor, I would already be totally suspicious, but bro is dense like my rock, so Scar even has to clear her throat to give him a hint. Unfortunately for Scar, he doesn't get it, since he always salutes back as if he thinks he's still in the army. Since all of her hints are going over his head, she begins to ask about yesterday and mostly if he returned home safely, even though they were at his place. But he still doesn't understand, so she tries to give more hints and explain more, unfortunately, to no avail. Eventually, she's had enough, so she channels her inner sussy baka and begins to be more straight and direct, just like my gender. But then Pastor denies everything she mentions as he claims that he doesn't know what she's talking about since he went straight home after work. With his response, Scar starts to look like she wants to destroy him, but in a bad way. She ends up realizing that our boy somehow still thinks that she got hypnotized by the app, so he's denying all plausibility. As such, she begins to activate her powers, absolutely frustrated at how slow Pastor's brain has been moving this entire time. Now fully powered up, she changes the subject and asks where the hell the uploaded documents are since she asked for them before she got to work. She then sent him flying off like Team Rocket as she's given up on her dreams today due to how dumb Pastor is. Meanwhile, as the fiery Scar lets off some steam on him, a woman is seen spying on them behind a pillar. The woman is revealed to be Aya as her curiosity got the better of her, since she found out that Scar had to take a taxi home super late at night. As such, she followed them to investigate more, hoping that maybe they didn't get to do the deed yet. Aya then began to look sad as it dawns on her that maybe they did, so she starts to think that she must have used some kind of secret trick to win him over. However, Aya just watches on as she allows Scar to absolutely obliterate Pastor over and over with her powers. In the end, Pastor is left inside a crater, where he asks himself why Scar is like this, since it was just only a moment ago they found herself too busy gasping for air underneath him. Nevertheless, he stays down on the ground, thinking to himself he needs to go scold her, but he can't even move since he got hit by an actual S-class. But luckily for Pastor, out of nowhere he hears someone faintly calling his name. Upon looking up, he discovers it was Aya asking him what the heck is going on. She's then quick to heal him, while he mentions that it was actually Scar that hit him really hard for no reason at all. After fully recovering, he gets up nonchalantly, thanking Aya for her S-class healing powers as he now feels even better than before. Afterwards, he asks her if she's seen the prodigy Eam lately, as he has some questions for her. Aya looks up surprised, so she makes the excuse that Eam is not around since she's busy traveling right now with her new inventions. We then discover that Eam was the one that told Aya to make that excuse, as none of the S-class leaders want past her questioning Eam about the hypnosis app. To divert his attention, she quickly makes use of her whale personalities and begins attempting flirting with him. Aya even goes as far as asking him out, as this was her prime opportunity to strike, as none of the other S-class girls are around. This catches Pastor off guard, as he wasn't expecting the legendary Aya to ask him out since he's not ready to use the app on her. Thus, he makes an excuse that he will be unfortunately unavailable, even though he knows he can't resist. He attempts to convince himself to not fall victim to any temptation, as Aya is the only woman in the world he would never dare to use his powers on. She was the main reason he didn't quit the guild even after being demoted, as she was the shining ray of light in his life. As such, Twitch streamer AC repeatedly denies her advances, as he knows she's going to be too much for him to handle without him having to control her mind. So like a ninja, he rushes away from Aya to prevent any further mishaps from happening, so he can't ever accidentally taint her. After running away and rejecting Aya again, she starts to wonder why he's the only man to ever run from him, as everyone else runs to her instead. Nonetheless, without having to use his lightning teleportation powers, Pastor urgently speeds through the entire headquarters, looking like he wants to destroy someone in extreme rage. Turns out I was right, as we discover that he was actually targeting Scar, probably wanting to devour the entirety of the strawberry cake, due to what she did to him earlier. Eventually, she starts turning around looking like a clown after hearing someone yell out her name. Upon figuring out whose voice it was, Scar already begins to look like she's in a love-like state, without our boy even meaning to do anything like a true Sigma male. In a flash, he somehow transforms into a battering ram as he straight up charges into the gates of Scar, totally unexpected, as he simultaneously yells at her for hitting him earlier. He then continues to siege the walls of Scar Rate as he uses his Hypnosis phone app, thinking that she's only allowing him because of her seemingly hypnotized. He then starts blaming Scar for his life being absolutely horrible, including his countless sleepless nights at work due to her workload. Meanwhile, Scar is enjoying the living hell out of everything, even joyfully thinking that he's sleepless only because of her on his mind. He claps back, still oblivious to the hypnosis never actually working, as he says the only thing good about her is her S-class heating up powers. In the end, Pastor leaves Scar in absolute bliss, even though he still thinks that he's getting revenge for everything she's done to him. Afterwards, Dense Boy warns her to never play tricks on him again, or else he will literally break the back of Scar. He then turns around to leave while he tries to cast the deactivate spell for his hypnosis, ordering her to go back to her senses in 10 minutes. Of course, Scar just lays on the ground with her eyes closed, replying back to Pastor with yes. Fast forward to Aya's house after work hours, where she's busy chugging wine left and right. It turns out she's doing the old, wash away her day and memories away with the help of some unlimited drinks, still in disbelief that Pastor would ever reject her even after her bold display. Aya then goes on a rant to herself, saying out loud how she was the only one to welcome him, as everyone else ignored him for being a trash F-rank human. We then discover how crazy she actually is about him, as he even has a stuffed toy and hundreds of posters of him, as if he's part of a K-pop group. In her sad state, she continues on, asking herself if this was one-sided the entire time, so she starts to cry a little bit. Honestly, I don't blame this crazy weirdo, as she even went as far as making a life-size god statue of our boy. That's when you know your Chad levels have transcended levels into an unspeakable state, when you find girls that every guy wants end up making life-size statues of you. Also, it turns out that she ordered a very expensive custom-made battering ram that followed the true size and shape of Pastor to its every inch. Anyways, since she says she can't have Rabbit right now, she instead brought an exact Rabbit replica straight to her home. After a playdate with the Pastor replica, she says it's basically the same thing, so she goes ham like my ham and cheese. Suddenly, as if she summoned the god himself, he ended up calling her, right after she conveniently hit the climax of the mountain. She then gets more excited than kids do when they hear that they're going on a trip to Disneyland, as she's hoping he's calling to fulfill his promise. As she answers the call, it turns out to be a battering ram dial, the worst thing that could ever happen to a girl, as Aya has to listen to her loved one want to use the siege engine into Scar. Aya's hand then drops lifelessly, so does her brand new phone, shot that Scar would do something as treacherous as this. Aya then activates Psycho Mode, as she thinks it was Scar that used his phone to dial her, just to prove that another S-class member has captured the prize that is Pastor. She then screams at the wall, asking if she should cut off Scar's tail first, as if she's a maniac. A flashback then occurred to when Pastor charged at Scar during work hours. It's revealed that after Pastor finished the crazy revenge siege against the walls of Scar, he whipped out his phone to schedule a dinner date with Aya in front of Scar. Like a true savage, he didn't even know Scar was listening, unaware that all the S-class girls have a secret pact to share him. Scar then gets angrier and angrier as she overheard his phone call, due to her not wanting to share him at all with anyone else. Furthermore, it's revealed that Aya was also pretending to be hypnotized during the call, as the aloof pastor orders her to get ready for a Sussy Nation attack tonight. As such, Scar had enough of what she's hearing, so she gets up and clenches her fists. She then activated her fire-bending powers, proclaiming that Pastor is only hers, but somehow, Pastor can't feel the room heating up, nor does he hear Scar yelling everything out loud. Back in the present, Pastor messages Aya, apologizing for not being able to make it last night, so she just says it's okay, since he's always so busy. Pastor then heads nonchalantly to his desk, thinking he's so slick to somehow get out of the sticky situation with Aya. However, he gets smacked in the head out of nowhere by Scar, where she looks like she's going to actually finish him off this time. He then turns around frustrated, since he thinks to himself he can't hypnotize her right now to punish her, due to how many people are around at work. Regardless, he turns around to face Scar, but she just makes a pouty face and crosses her arm, literally not saying anything. He then can't figure out why she's so mean today, since the usual after effects of hypnotizing her would mean she would be happy all day, every day. Suddenly, as Pastor was busy using his brain, Scar used her ultra ninja powers to quickly grab his phone to analyze it. As she snooped around, she found evidence of Pastor watching sussy anime recaps on YouTube, so she yells out to everyone in the office, asking how he could watch such a thing. In just a mere seconds, his reputation gets thrashed with his co-workers again, as if Scar planned to humiliate him this entire time. Thus, Pastor panics, so he tried to explain that it's actually family-friendly, that's why he subscribes to King Anime on YouTube. During his entire plea, he accidentally trips on himself, so he lands on his knee onto Scar hands first. With all eyes on him inside the office, they catch him being a sussy baka, since there's no way out of this now, especially as he accidentally went hands first. All the girls then started to look even more down on him, claiming how bad a person Pastor is, although the entire time Pastor is busy yelling that it's all a misunderstanding. But then, out of nowhere, Scar instantly gets up, spelling the word embarrassing in front of everyone, but this time with a smirk on her face. Now noticing what's really happening, Pastor begins to sweat, asking himself if she did this intentionally to punish him. After finding themselves alone, a ghost comes out of his nose as he hears Scar tell him that he can't be punished much now, as his reputation is now rock bottom.